forward to hear me, see me speak. Congregation of St. Paul for inviting me here and tell my story about how surviving the Holocaust. My Holocaust experience. By the wave of a stick, I survived. Good morning, teachers, students. It is a privilege to stand before you today to tell you about what the Nazi regime did to the entire world during the World War II. I thank you for the opportunity you deserve to know the history of these atrocities. While the story that you are about to hear happened to me, it also happened to millions of other people. The Nazis did not just murder Jews. They killed the mentally ill, the homosexuals, gypsies, anybody who was not blonde-haired and blue-eyed, and white, and anyone who stood up to them. You children are the future of our world. It is you who can make our world better, more peaceful place. In this world, history repeats itself. Those who do not learn from our mistakes are doomed to repeat them. Thank you for inviting me here to speak about my misfortune, the Holocaust. All of the experience that you will hear about today took place 73 years ago. First, let me tell you that I speak with a Hungarian, Czechoslovakian, and Yiddish accent. I hope you can understand me. Please know that I come here today as a survivor, not a polished speaker. I'm one of the few lucky ones that survived the Holocaust. By a wave of a stick, and with God's help, I survived. My name is Albert Hersh. Before World War II, my name was Adolf Hershkowitz, and in Yiddish is Avrum, and my mother called me Avrumala. I was born in a small farming town named Tibava, Czechoslovakia. In 1938, Hitler gave part of Slovakia to Hungary. This was very good because this included my hometown, and it kept the Jews in my hometown safe for a little bit longer. I came from a family of 10 children, 6 girls and 4 boys. In the order from the oldest to the youngest, there was Frida, Basha, Malka, Rivka, Froyam, Moshe, Fega, Zachariah, Avrum, and Leah. I was the youngest boy. There were 18 Jewish families in my hometown, which was about 120 people, including children and adults. There were also about 2,000 Christians living in the area. Most were farming families. The Jewish families in my hometown were all very hard workers. In addition to being farmers, all were of different trades. They were butchers, mill workers, bar owners, shoemakers, insurance salesmen, general grocery stores, leather tanners, and also tailors. My family was the tailor of the town. We custom-made and supplied all the clothing for the farmers. Our Jewish community in Tibava had our own temple and a Hebrew school. We observed all Jewish holidays. After World War II was over, only 24 of the 120 Jewish people from our village survived. In addition, I lost 60 people from my extended family. Grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, all were murdered. Prior to World War II, I had a very happy, typical childhood for a boy from Tibava. I started Hebrew school when I was 6 years old. From 6 to 8, I went to Hebrew school. From 8 to 3, I went to public school, which was mandated Catholic school. From 4 to 6, I went back to Hebrew school. We had Hebrew school every day, including Sunday. On Saturday, the Sabbath, we rested and went to temple. Even though our school days were long, we had lots of friends and also managed to find time to play soccer, my favorite sport. In 1936, when I was about 8 years old, I heard rumors that Jewish people were being attacked in Germany and put into prisons, and that Jews with no citizens were being sent out of the country. As the years went by, I heard more and more stories about Jews being rounded up and sent out of the country. Not only did these rumors continue, but they kept getting worse. Young Jewish boys and girls from Slovakia came across the border from our hometown and told us horrible stories about thousands of Jewish families who were rounded up and taken to ravines. Once they were there, they were shot and killed and burned with gasoline. Never in our history has anything so gruesome been heard of before, and therefore none of us could or would believe these terrible atrocities. You have to understand, when these atrocities occurred in 1944, there was no internet, there was no TV, no movie shows, no newspapers, no telephones. We did not travel from one town to another on vacation. We did not know what was happening in the cities 100 kilometers away, unless we had relatives visiting from other towns. Our world was very small and did not involve war or evil. So when we heard stories about these types of atrocities, we could not confirm them with a phone call or by using Google or YouTube. Not only that, the horrors that we would experience ourselves were beyond our wildest dreams. Most people today who have the benefit of history books could not even imagine that one human being could treat another with such evil. As World War II progressed, so did the annihilation of the Jewish people. In the beginning of the year of 1944, my older brother Moshe, who was 21 years old, received an order that he must report to a work camp. After that, we did not hear from him. Just before the spring of that same year, an order came that told us to gather at the temple with 50 kilos of clothing and food and leave our homes. They made us believe that we were just being relocated to farms. Being God-fearing, faithful, and trusting people, we believed them and did what we were told to do. My brother and I were concerned. We pleaded with our mother not to go. But she cried and convinced us to go along so we would be all together and not have to worry about each other. I was only 14 years old at that time, and my brother Zacharia was only 15 years old. So we listened to our mother and we went together. The Shandars, the Hungarian police with feathers in their black hats, loaded us into horse-driven wagons and took us to the ghetto, which was an old brick factory fenced in with barbed wires in the city of Buchenwald. We stayed there for only 2 weeks, fenced in with our regular food or sanitary conditions. In the ghetto, we had only the food that we brought with us to eat. After about 2 weeks in the ghetto, the gendarmes came to put us into the train. And that was made up of cattle cars. But they didn't ask us to get on the train. They were on horseback and used whips and sticks to round us up. The gendarmes were cursing at us and called us bido, jido, dirty Jews, and hitting us on our heads and bodies. We loaded up into the cattle cars, about 100 people in each car. Old people, babies, sick people were all in there together, with no food, water, or sanitary conditions. People had to relieve themselves right where they were sitting. I was on the train with my mother, my sister Malka, Elia, my brother Zachariah, my uncle Joseph, my aunt Dora, and my cousin Moshe, Yonah, Malka, and Handel. My uncle Joseph was a very handsome, strong young man who was a major in the Austrian-Hungary army and had fought in World War I for our country, which was the same country that was putting him into the train. I remember he was looking out through the slats in the walls of the train, trying to see where we are going. He said that it looked like we were going to Krakow, Poland. My mother was trying to be brave for us, but she was very scared and spent most of the time on the train crying. We were on the train for 1 day and 1 full night, and then we arrived at Auschwitz. Once we were in Auschwitz, the old prisoners that were already there opened the doors and told us to get off the train. The old prisoners knew what went on at Auschwitz. So in an effort to help us and save as many of us as they could from going to the gas chambers, they told the young boys and girls to say they were older than they were, and told the mothers with the little babies to give the babies to their mothers and grandmothers and older women. The old prisoners knew that the Nazis would keep the healthy young people for work and would gas and kill the rest of the people. We had no idea the atrocities we were about to face. As we got off the train, they lined us up in rows, separating the men from the women. That was the last time I saw my mother. And to sisters, Malka and Laya, I never had a chance to say goodbye to them. As they marched us in our 2 lines, men and women, we came upon a tall SS soldier with a stick. The SS soldier, whose name I later found out was the Dr. Mengele, who would look at each person and would wave the stick to the left or to the right. He is the one who determined who would live or who would die. The older men and women went to the right. The younger men and women went to the left. My mother, my sister Malka, and Laya, and my uncle Joseph, my aunt Dora, and my cousin Yoina were all waved to the right. My brother Zachariah, my cousin Malka, Handel, and Moshe, and I were waved to the left. By that wave of a stick, it gave me a chance to survive. My cousin Moshe was standing right beside me as we were ordered to the left, but he decided to run to his father. We'll learn later that that was the big mistake, because everyone who went to the right went directly to the gas chambers, where they were murdered with the most sadistic way. They were told that they were to take a shower. They were humiliated, forced to undress, and shoved into the shower room to a different direction. They lined us up and stripped us naked. They took all of our clothing and belongings we had with us. They shaved our heads, humiliated us, thoroughly frisked us, even between our legs, and tattooed us. This is my tattoo. Still have it on. I was scared, and I asked my older brother, Zachariah, to go first. Zachariah's number is 7630, and mine is 7631. The next morning, they selected about 200 of us, ordered to march to a camp, Auschwitz, which was a coal mining factory. I worked there until January 1945. While we were there, every day we worked from 8 to 6 p.m. Our daily food ration was a slice of bread with margarine and a tea made of straw, and leftovers from the cafeteria that fed the Polish workers for lunch and for dinner. Sometimes we got a bowl of soup with beets or cabbage or bits of potatoes. We worked inside a coal mine. My job was to remove white stones from the coal as it came down the conveyor belt. I had to pick it out and throw it into the conveyor belt. I worked alongside my brother Zachariah. The daily conditions were often frightening and life-threatening. We walked to the job with the SS guarding us. Often we were kicked and beaten with rifles for no reason at all. I witnessed many beatings and even hanging for those who tried to escape or who were having difficulties to keep up. In January 1945, they told us to get ready for a march because the Russian front was coming closer. We marched for a day and a night without stopping. We did not dare get out of line, even to relieve ourselves, because either the German shepherd dogs would tear us apart or the SS would just shoot us. We marched until we came to a field close to the train station. There they told us to lay down in the snow. I was very frightened because I thought they were going to shoot us. But we stayed there until an open cattle car train arrived, and they told us and loaded us up about 100 people per boxcar. There was at least 1 foot of snow in the boxcar. We were squashed together with no place to move. We had no food or water on the train, so we ate the snow. 1 day later, we arrived in Buchenwald. My best friend Yossi Roth died during the train. Only about half of us made it off the train. In Buchenwald, I was put in a Jugendblock, where about 400 boys, 12 to 20, were housed. One of those boys in the Jugendblock was the famous author Elie Wiesel. Our job there was to carry rocks from the quarry. Every day a group of Jewish prisoners were called by their number. Together they were forced to march out of the camp to dig ditches. After they dug the ditches, they were lined up along the ditches and shot so they would fall into their fresh dug ditch. On April 10, 1945, our block elster told us that we were to be selected the next day to march out of the camp to dig ditches. He said to us that after our number were called and we were standing in the assembly lines preparing to march out of the camp, the Nazi officer were going to ask us what we are, what nationality we are. He said that we should respond stating our nationality, saying that we are Hungarians, Czechoslovakian, Polish, Russians, Romanian. Say that we are do not say that we are Jews. So the next morning we were assembled as usual for a head count. The Nazi officer told us, "Juden heraustreten." Jews, get out of line. Step forward. And nobody moved. He got very mad with us and said, "Was ist denn los? Verstehen die nicht Deutsch? What's wrong with you? Don't you understand German?" The Blockelster said to the Nazi officers, "These sind Poles, Russians, Hungarians, Romanians." Then the Nazi officer pointed to a young, frightened Jewish boy from Auschwitz and said, "Bist du Jude? Are you a Jew?" The boy said, shaking and frightened, and replied, "Ja, ja." The Nazi officer said, "So sag deine Kameraden, dass sie heraustreten. Tell your friends to step out of the line." The boy said in Yiddish, "Jüngler kommt heraus." Young boys step out of line, and nobody moved. He was shaking and crying. At that exact moment, the Flieger alarm, the sirens started blowing overhead, were blasting. We saw the American planes overhead, and we all ran as fast as we could get back into the barracks. This Blockelster who saved our lives was a Christian political prisoner. His name was Kalina, and he has been honored and recognized as a hero at the Holocaust Memorial Yad Vashem in Israel. April 11, 1945, at about 10 a.m., there was the day we were liberated. At about noon, the American tanks rolled into our camp. That was the happiest day of my life. The prisoners were screaming and crying and carrying the American soldier on their shoulder throughout the camp. Some of the cruel SS guards were captured by the Russian prisoners and killed until the American army intervened. They said that the Nazis were prisoners of war and we would all have to abide by the Geneva Conventions. I'm forever grateful for the American Army and the great nation of ours, United States of America. After we were liberated, the American Army brought in the people from Weimar to see firsthand what was happening in the concentration camps in Buchenwald. The people of Weimar saw the survivors, the conditions of the camp, and the method of torture used against the prisoners. One of the many unspeakable things that they saw was the lampshades that were made of prisoners' skin who had tattoos. Her name was Elsa Koch, who was the Lagerführer's wife, had prisoners killed and skinned for the lampshade and pictures. The people of Weimar said they did not know what went on in the camp of Buchenwald, but they lived only a mile away from the fence. My brother Zachariah and I returned to our hometown after we were liberated. We found our homes looted and destroyed. We thought we were the only survivors from our family, so we relocated ourselves to Prague. One day, when Zachariah and I were walking down the street, I saw a man in a soldier uniform walking towards us on the same sidewalk. It was our brother Moshe, who you could only imagine the overwhelming joy we all experienced from this reunion. I arrived in the United States in 1948 with my sister and Rivka and my brother Froyam. We were sent over to the United States before the World War II. About a year and a half after being in America, I was drafted in the American Army and served in the Korean War. I was in the Korean War in the 8228 MASH hospital that was about 20 miles from the front lines. For about a year, even though I had just come from concentration camp and was still having nightmares, I was proud to serve this great country in the United States Army. In 1957, I married my wife, Pearl Davis, and thank God we have 6 children and 6 grandchildren. I went into business with my brother Zachariah, known as Tad. We had owned and operated a cabinet shop known as the East Woodworking Company in Little Italy of Cleveland. There we are making custom cabinets. There are a few points that I would like to make for you before I finish. Why do I feel it is important to share my misfortune and the tragedies that occurred during World War II? There are 3 main reasons. The first reason, since my liberation, I thought this could never happen again to any other people. Unfortunately, it seems that some nations still do not have a true respect for humanity. Therefore, I feel the more we educate humanity that are willing to listen, the more we can all together prevent these tragedies from ever happening again in our future and in our children's future. So save a soul is to save the world. The second reason, there are people today that say that Holocaust never happened. They're revisionists who try to rewrite history. I feel it's important as a survivor of the Holocaust and concentration camps to tell people that it is true, so it will never happen again to anyone on this earth. The third reason, even in the midst of all the tragedies and suffering, there were human beings who risked their lives to help other fellow human beings. A few in particular were where the Polish workers were working with us. They risked their lives to share food with me and some of the other prisoners. Another kindness of humanity that I would like to share is it pertains to my brother Moshe, who is I mentioned earlier. He was told to report to work camp in January of 1944. We all later learned that he too was in concentration camp, and somehow he escaped and found his way to a German family farm. This family, at great risk of death to themselves, hid my brother in a chicken coop until the end of the war, and he too survived. He repaid their kindness by continuing to send money and support to them for many years. Many people ask me about God. How did I feel about God when I was in concentration camp? They asked me, do I still believe in God? They asked me why God let this happen. Well, I was in concentration camp. I personally questioned, where was God? How could he let this happen to innocent men, women, and children? There were times when I was disillusioned and even angry, but it was my belief in God that helped me to survive. I thought about my prayers. On Rosh Hashanah we say, Hashem Yibloch, Hashem Mulach, Hashem Melach, which means God is, God was, and God will be there forever. I later thought about my feelings, about my belief in God's relationship to this tragedy, and I came to a realization. God is good, but God created mankind and gave them free will. Man can choose to do good or choose to do evil. If man does good, they will be rewarded. If man does evil, they will have to face their Maker for what they have done. It was people, not God, that did this horrible atrocity. Throughout my true belief in God, my teachings and my practice of my religion has always guided my thoughts in action. In my mind, there is only one God and only one creator of the universe. He doesn't care what religion you are or what holiday you keep or celebrate, as long as you are reaching out to him. In Judaism, we teach that it is our duty to fix this world and to act like God would act. We should treat others the way we want to be treated. We should respect all people. We should love each other. While we want to be close to God, I truly believe that there is no one path to be near him. Everybody reaches to God by moving along their own path, as long as you are walking towards him and not away from him. You are on the right path. You may be wondering, why didn't you fight when the Nazis came for you? Many times have I asked this question. At the time, my brother and I pleaded with my mother that we should stay in our house and refuse to go, and maybe fight the Nazis when they came back to our house. She said no, and that we were going to try to cooperate, and know that we would have been killed if we would have tried to fight. Why didn't the Jewish people fight? In 1944, Jewish people didn't have a country of their own. There was no Israel. As the Holocaust started, we were misled. We were told that we would be resettled on farms. Then they separated the men from the families. By the time we were taken to the ghetto, well, it was too late. We did not have guns or food or shelter. The Nazis had the guns and the German shepherd dogs they were trained to kill. You might say, but I would fight and do whatever it takes to keep them from taking my family. Maybe so, But let me give you an example. In World War II, the Japanese won the Battle of Bataan and Corregidor Peninsula and took almost 78 American, Chinese, and Philippine soldiers prisoners. The Japanese marched the prisoners 65 miles without stopping for food, water, rest, or bodily functions. More than 11,000 of those Marines died, outnumbered by the Japanese captors. They were not able to resist, and they were soldiers who were trained to kill. We were mostly women and children and old people, and we had no weapons. But there were times when the Jews did fight back. In many countries in Europe, by rowing groups of Jewish partisans who attacked the Nazis when they could. Prisoners in the Sobibor camp rioted against the Nazis, and many of them escaped. And in the Warsaw ghetto, less than 500 Jewish youngsters took up arms and fought so hard that the Nazis needed 40 days and airstrike to defeat them. You may wonder, were all the Germans evil? I don't think so. Not all of the townspeople who I saw or soldiers who were working in the camps were evil. Probably not all of them wanted to take part in the atrocities that occurred there. I remember there was one guard in the tower of Auschwitz, in the coal mine company where I worked, who was a Slovak guard, would throw me a piece of bread on many occasions. I don't know if he helped anybody else, or if other prisoners got compensated in the same manner. Unfortunately, in this world, you don't have to have a majority of evil people for bad things to happen. You only need a small percentage who are truly evil and large number of regular people to stand by and do nothing for such horrors to take place. At the time this happened, the Germans were considered to be one of the world's most educated, sophisticated, advanced country. But because the world did not stop them, the war they started killed somewhere between 40 and 50 million people. You may ask, do I hate Germans for what they did to me, to my family, and to thousands upon thousands of innocent people? There's no way that I could forgive those who participated in the Holocaust, but I cannot hate the current German people. That is because hating is a sickness. What hurts me the most today is that there are anti-Semites who hide the fact that they try to convince people that the Holocaust never happened. They're writing propaganda books. We all need to be aware of that. These people exist, and we all must be prepared to shout, never again, and never forget. We will forever remember that many thousands of Nazi SS soldiers took part in the extermination of the Jewish people and have never come forward and confessed to the crimes that they committed. And I have not seen anyone asking for forgiveness from the survivors of the Holocaust from God Almighty. I think there is one German that is being now judged, and he's the only one that asked forgiveness from the Nazis, and he's been adjudicated. birth of Germany, Poland, Czechoslovakia, Hungary, Russia, Croatia, Lithuania are soaked with the Jewish blood forever. We cannot ever forgive those who took part in the direct annihilation of innocent Jewish people. I'm sure that God has a special place in hell for them. I would like to offer a few final thoughts. As I always say, God helps those that help themselves. Looking back, if the Jews had run in all different directions and the surrounding nations had been there to help them, most of us would have survived. Remember, you are the king in your home, and nobody has the right to move you from your home. My motto is, God helps those that help themselves. There is a poem by a man who was a Lutheran pastor who was imprisoned by the Nazis in concentration camp and during World War II. After the war, he regretted that he did not do more to help the victims of the Nazis. His name is Martin Niemöller. Here it is. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews. I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. And then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. I think we should all say together, never again, we will not stand idly by when atrocities are being carried out anywhere in the world on any human beings. If we would all learn to live our lives without hate and not let others hate, we could stop anything like this from ever happening again, like it has happened in World War II. Since World War II. In Biafra, Cambodia, Sudan, Rwanda, Siberia, Bosnia, Sierra Leone. Unfortunately, the list goes on and on. I thank you for listening. Thank you very much for listening, and I hope you get something out of my speech. This is